Hey guys, so the other video cut off quickly, but I'm still going to continue it. We were talking about Elijah and Jezebel and God and Elijah's journey, his destiny being revealed to us in the text of 1 Kings chapter 19. And Elijah, at one point in verse 4, he wanted to die. He had enough. But God said, there's more for you. Arise and eat. Because God needed him to go further. And God needed Elijah to go further because he had him to do things. Elijah still had people to meet. He still had territories to conquer. And we move and see that in verse 9. So God sends Elijah to anoint Hazael, Jehu, and Elisha. These three people were important to his journey because Elijah was the one who had to anoint them. Elijah was the one who had to give the okay. God is sending you places where you're going to be the one to set things in motion, where you're going to be the pioneer of people coming together, of businesses starting to actually branch out and do, of you being able to see people prosper under your leadership. God has to get you to a place to meet those people. But in order for you to meet those people, you got to first get right here. Get to this place, and you're right here. And you're thinking this is it. But no, God is going to give you the strength. And that's why you can't rely on your feelings. And God is trying to get his people to a place where they're not relying on their feelings. He is trying to get them to a place where they don't allow their feelings to dictate what they do. If you allow your feelings to dictate what you do, you are going to be a walking hazard. That is not okay. Because God wants to be able to build you in such a way where your strength will come from him. And in order for him to do that, you cannot act on your feelings to jeopardize what he has for you and what he is doing through you. You can talk a good game. You can say how you feel. But when God says arise and eat, when God says go here, when God says start that business, when God says befriend that person, when God says let them go, you do it. No questions asked. And that's what Elijah did. Obedience is better than sacrifice. Elijah could have been like, you know what? I'm going to sacrifice the obedience to God and do what I want to do. And that is, I'm going to chill here. I'm going to stay right here and I'm not going, God. But Elijah didn't do that. He was obedient. Learn from this. Be obedient regardless of how you feel, regardless of the threat over your life. Be obedient to God. The enemy wants you to believe that the threat is bigger and more important than the obedience, so that the fear attached to the threat can have more effect over your fear of God attached to the obedience. So you have to get to a place where you see that the fear of God is more important than the fear of the threat. And in order for you to do that, you have to go and you have to be obedient to God's voice in your life. So, why is it important? Elisha follows Elijah. Elijah ended up being a mentor to Elisha. And eventually Elisha took over Elijah's place in that way and carried on to do the work of God. You have to understand that there are people that you are going to meet that you're going to have to help. People that are going to relate to you, people that are going to connect to you in a way where nobody has ever been able to connect to you, where you're going to feel like this is from God. Amongst all the people that you weren't able to really connect with, there are people yet that you have to connect with that are going to feel like home, feel like this is it. Because when Elijah met Elisha, Elijah knew this is it. Because eventually he had to go. He had to go and leave and allow Elisha to take over. And Elisha was willing. There are people who are going to be willing to help you, to carry on what God has put in you to start. But you've got to keep going so that it can start. Sometimes it doesn't start until you meet those people, but that requires you to stretch, for you to keep moving forward and to not give up in the place that you are at right now. So, what can we learn from this? What can we learn from Elijah? We can learn that our feelings are not facts. We can learn not to rely on our feelings. We can state our feelings like Elijah did. We can be honest with God. But when it's time for us to be obedient and do what he has called us to do, we can learn from Elijah to do what is called for us to do, to continue on our purpose, no matter the threat, no matter what people say. We can learn that there are people and experiences and moments that we have yet to experience. And even in our weakness, even if we feel depressed, even if we feel like we want to die, that does not mean that our destiny is over because we feel like that. We have to realize that there's so much more to our destiny than the depression, than the sadness. There's so much more that awaits for us, and we have to know that God is going to give us the strength. Our help comes from the Lord. My last video was our help comes from the Lord, Psalms 121. Your help comes from God. Your physical help, your mental, your emotional, your spiritual, your help comes from God. God will feed you physically. Bring physical food to feed your system. Mental food, spiritual food, emotional food. God will feed you. But it's when he knows it's time. You could think it's time to give up, but God could say, no, it's time for you to get fed. It's time for you to be strengthened. And God will strengthen you and give you the help that you need. All right? That's all I got. I will see you on my next video. Bye.